Experience the future of packaging and processing up close and in action. Explore groundbreaking innovations, engage with hands-on solutions, and connect with the experts transforming the industry. See how these advancements can revolutionize your products, production lines, and business. It all starts here. Don't miss out. Register today at packexpolasvegas.com/unpackedpod. You're listening to Unpacked with PMMI, where we share the latest packaging and processing industry insights, research, and innovations to help you advance your business. Hi, and welcome to part 3 of a special 6-part sustainability series of Unpacked with Packaging World editors Anne-Marie Mohan and Matt Reynolds. As always, I'm your host, Sean Riley, and today the three of us take a deep dive into paper-based materials. Matt and Anne-Marie cover sustainability and packaging materials daily for leading packaging publication Packaging World. Paper is one of the oldest package material types still in use today, and humans have been reusing paper as far back as 11th century Japan. As companies strive to make their products more sustainable, many are moving back to paper because it is justly perceived as highly sustainable. Anne-Marie and Matt talk about some of the different ways paper-based packaging is being utilized and also break down exactly how reusable paper is. And the answer might surprise you. Let's jump right in.
So with all the fancy introductions out of the way, welcome back to the podcast, Matt Reynolds and Anne-Marie Mohan. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Welcome, Anne-Marie.
It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure, as always, is all mine. Today, we are talking paper-based recycling. And paper, to me, seems like if it's not the oldest packaging type, it has to be one of the oldest. I can just picture, the person going into the general store and picking the thing off the shelf, guy wraps it up in paper, and that's their package to go out the door. So I guess now that we're kind of seeing it kind of come back everywhere, it seems like we'd gotten away from paper and now we're getting back into it. I have to imagine a reason that we got away from it at a lot of levels was because of some of the limitations with regards to what could go in it, like liquids and oils and things like that. So I guess we could just start with talking about what some of the limitations were and how they're being overcome.
Absolutely, you're right about that. As packaging evolved, they started adding a lot of polyethylene coatings to keep out the moisture and adding different barriers to that packaging for shelf life and other functionalities. But companies are really, in their quest to be more sustainable, moving to paper in areas where we would never have thought possible. One recent story that I reported on, which was really fascinating, was Nestle in the UK. They have a very popular product, and I haven't had it myself, but I believe it's kind of like an M&M. Mm-hmm. And it's called Smarties, and it's a huge brand over there. Very iconic brand, very iconic packaging. And in the past, like you would have an M&M's package, it was flow wrapped. That was one of their main packages, and their goal was to move from plastic to paper. And they have 419 SKUs in all different types of packages. But the flow wrap was a big one. And their goal was to move to paper and have the same shelf life, functionality, etc. In addition, they wanted to be able to continue to run it at the same speeds that they were able to run their plastic packaging. So this took several years of development. They were able to make that change. So now they're using a paper package with a water-based coating.
Okay.
So they can, it's not affected by the environment, etc., just like plastic would be. And then with some of their other packagings, they had to redesign the formats, but tried to keep it as close to what people were used to, just because it is very iconic. But that's a great example of a huge shift from plastic to paper.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Didn't they go from like a tube style to like a hexagonal tube in some of the Smarties?
Yes.
Yeah, that was an interesting. I remember seeing that where you got to balance something that people are used to seeing.
Right. That's what my question was, did they kind of segue to it, or was it just like an abrupt shift, or kind of alongside it type deal? How did they lay that out from, I guess, a marketing or a whatever standpoint? Any idea? Was it an addition or a complete move?
It was a complete move across the
Wow,
board.
Yeah, that's bold. Good for them.
And it's bold. I mean, you mentioned trying to keep up the same speeds. That's really, I mean, when you make this kind of shift, you're not just shifting one thing, you're shifting upstream and downstream. So think about another example that it's another European example is a Mars company. Mars out of the UK, but this is a biscuit or a cracker or a cookie. I'm not exactly sure. Somewhere in that milieu, it's called Bolisto. Really popular in Germany, I guess. It's like a chocolate covered graham cracker kind of thing. And they had similar flow wrap packaging that they were using. So they had a pretty big installed base of equipment that was flow wrapping large volumes of this stuff. So when they made the decision or to go to paper, to go to a paper-based flow wrap, they didn't want to have to gut the entire packaging operation. So they worked with Syntagon in this case, who put together basically a retrofit for flow wrapping machines. So it's like almost an off-the-shelf kind of thing where existing flow wrapping machines, existing installed base can be used to make the switch to a paper-based printed roll stock, which of course is a huge cost savings, and then do so without losing the speed of production. And then paper couldn't have done this before because now there's, like you mentioned, there's either water-based or mineral-based frequently barriers that are used in conjunction. I don't know what it was in this case exactly. I know there was a lot of trial and error to get the right paper because that graham cracker and the interior could get a little, I guess, stale very easily. Shelf life was a concern.
Right.
But in ways paper hasn't been functional in that milieu before, it is now. And that's why you're seeing it kind of, it's encroaching on plastic and aluminum. It's encroaching everywhere, paper where you've never seen it before.
And it's interesting that you note Syntagon. So now you're talking about, which is often what we hear as a problem, not a problem, but one of the difficulties with sustainable type initiatives is that you have to get the OEM involved because we're dealing, as we've said, with machines that might be 20, 30 years old. So they have this retrofit now. So I have to think this exists now if there's other people that are thinking to go down that path that they know now, hey, this is something that's possible. You can get a retrofit for these machines we've used forever to now deal with paper.
Yeah, we're seeing it on, paper blister is another big one. Pack Expo a few months ago, I can't remember if it was Las Vegas or the Philadelphia show. I think it was Las Vegas, but Rower and Starview are together with a paper blister, which is ostensibly a blister pack. Imagine batteries hanging up as you're going down the supermarket checkout line or something like that.
When you're saying blister, I was thinking like a pill, and I'm trying to figure out
similar.
How you do it. Okay, how
similar,
you're doing that with paper. Okay.
Luckily, this isn't pharmaceuticals in this case, but batteries might be a good. I think Energize. I can't remember if it was Duracell or Energizer was a big splash product not too long ago, it's ostensibly the back card would be supplemented with almost like a thermoformed window kind of holding the product. That can now all be paper, and it can be done on the same machine. You're essentially thermoforming paper, where I don't know what the technique is exactly, but it uses similar molds and similar. So based on the same equipment with some sort of retrofit, Rower and Starview have been able to do something like that. And they're not the only ones. I know Sunoco is doing something like that. So you'll be seeing, and it's for products that don't necessarily need a barrier. In this case, so I mentioned batteries. We could talk about pens or razor blade, these kinds of things, and they can get away with either just like a cutout window.
That's what I was just going to say. With something like a battery, you don't really need to see.
You don't need to see it, and in fact, you really want a battery nice and wrapped up.
Exactly.
But for like say a pen, like I'm holding a pen now that's got like a nifty little rubber.
Sure.
Somebody might want to touch that and see what the hand feel is going to be like. So maybe a small window can accomplish that with just a die cut cutout, and that could be a paper blister and something like
Interesting.
that. Interesting.
So
it puts a lot of onus on the printed nature of it. So if they need to demonstrate what's in the pack without a clear window, without transparency, then you need to be able to print on the pack, which paper is able to accept too. In a lot of different colors, you can beautifully print on it.
Very cool. So I guess we've kind of hit some food things and we've hit some non-food things, and it seems to me the one that we haven't touched on is liquids. Like, how about it? Is there ways that we can get paper involved with, whether it's beverages, whether it's, I don't know, cooking oils, whether it's basically any sorts of things that would be more, have moisture involved.
Well, you can, and the easiest way is in the secondary packaging, honestly. So, and it bears mentioning anyways that you're seeing what used to be the purview of plastic completely in, let's say, like a six-pack can ring or something like that,
mm-hmm.
or a multi-packs. Consider a shrink wrap multi-pack of tuna cans, or any of these kind of secondary packaging. You're starting to see paper there quite frequently. There's a couple examples. Keel Clip from Graphic Packaging, Westrock's got quite a few different similar, whether can handles themselves or a multi-pack kind of. I think in the case of Heinz beans, so that's pretty robust.
Yeah, that's a heavy can.
So maybe 4 cans of beans. I can't remember. Maybe a single line of 4, a single line of 3. So the paper has to be virgin paper in this case. They're always doing the forestry certified,
right,
to make sure that it's sustainable, it's renewable. But there is some degradation of paper after recycling. The fibers get shorter. It doesn't have quite as much strength. But if you're holding cans of beans or cans of tuna, you're seeing paper in areas where the shrink multi-packs aren't there anymore. And the can handles, like can carriers, there was just a big project with Westrock and Modelo and Corona down in Mexico, I believe, that's going on right now. And there was another one, Fishbone
from Atlantic Packaging, that's fairly new. And the one interesting aspect of that is that they worked in conjunction. Well, they first developed the can holder or multi-pack holder, and then they went to SERPA to help them engineer the equipment. So I think there are 8 or 11 different models depending on the speed that you want to go, and there are a couple different types of this Fishbone carrier. And it's also made of paperboard, and it's covered with a water-based coating, so it is recyclable.
Yeah, these water-based coatings, or you can go the route you mentioned, liquids. More specifically, contact with. We're seeing some thermoform trays. So consider it's not quite liquid, but let's say a salmon fillet or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're seeing. What used to be a fully plastic thermoform can go to the paper-based thermoform now. There's obviously some sort of liner there. There has to be a liner that acts as the barrier. You can't just use the liquid or the water-based sealant there. But there's ways that the consumer can remove the liner, and then 2 different waste streams, one for the paper, and then there's the paper-based thermoform tray is performing the function of protection and carrying the product itself, and you're using that much less plastic. So instead of the full thermoform tray, you just have that liner with the lidding that can be modified atmosphere. It could be a skin pack, vacuum skin pack. So you're starting to see these thin layers of some sort of plastic material act as the barrier, and that gets you into even the craziest, in my opinion, would be the paper bottle.
Yeah.
So the actual, we're talking liquids, not just.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around that.
I do too. The real pioneer here, I think, has been Ecologic.
Okay.
And we've done some stories with them. There's been some more recent. I just got an email this morning about a project out of Stockholm, but it's a tequila-based paperboard. Paper bottle. And these are using molded pulp rather than. It's not like necessarily a cardstock kind of situation.
Sure.
This is like a thermoformed pulp around then some sort of liner or bladder that might be on the interior. We're seeing it pop up in airports even, where.
Well, now that you're saying that, like I know I've seen in CVS a box of water, and I mean, for lack of a better, how much of that is in line? I mean, I guess there has to be some liner in it, but for the majority, that's some paper-based. Paper-based.
We're seeing bag and box quite frequently for whether it's detergents and so on, but also water or there's even applications in craft beer and so on, where you're just reducing the total amount of plastic use. There still has to be some, because obviously it'll be one soggy box if you fill it with liquid. But these are all applications where you're using all the great structural properties of paper and to be able to contain something, and lightweight and something that's easily recyclable with a limited amount of plastic footprint on the inside.
That kind of answered the question too, because as we're talking about paper, what I'm thinking is the earliest days of when recycling first started becoming a thing. That I seem to recall, and this is going to date a lot of us, but really the first things I remember being recycled were your newspapers, and the people would put their stack of newspapers out at the curb. So I would imagine that paper was obviously kind of early in the recycling stream. So that's already sort of built up as something that now can these be thrown in with that, or will it, like you said, certain barriers would have to be removed, or for the most part
depends on the application.
Right.
It depends on also. I mean, consider the pizza box that you get.
Always
Never know what to do with it
No,
because there's
you
oil that gets on
you
there.
guys should know.
So, well, yeah, but in the case of the liner,
No, I know.
ideal situation is the consumer removes the liner. In a lot of these thermoform trays, what is it? Graphic Packaging is doing that. What used to be AR Packaging, now part of Graphic
Right.
Packaging. They're doing a lot of these trays that are, that the consumer then removes the thin
Okay.
barrier liner, and then the external portion is, of course, then fully recyclable.
Right.
But of course, in the fog of war of cooking, something could happen. But that's the ideal that they're
Right.
going for.
And I believe that there is technology available now with the paper bottle where they're developing a coating that will allow the bottle for liquids, as you were talking about, the molded pulp. And then in the case of Smarties, because it's a water-based coating, it is fully recyclable. So there are examples of that already that can go with your regular
Very nice.
paper stream.
So do we have a consensus amongst the three of us about the pizza box? Do we know what we're supposed to? We don't know what we're supposed to be. So I thought that would be one way thing that we could leave you with, but we also are still trying to figure out which stream to put our pizza box in.
If it comes from Zoom,
yes,
which is a company,
yes.
ZUME,
ZUME,
then you're able to get your Pizza Hut pizza in a box that you can then recycle.
So I have to eat a Pizza Hut pizza.
Unfortunately, we're here in Chicago, and you're stuck with Pizza Hut.
Yeah. So we might still. So we'll get back to you. We're going to have a separate podcast on what to do exactly with pizza boxes because we're all still very confused about it. Unless you have the old school ones that are just the cardboard without any liner, then they can just be thrown away. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for coming on here. It was a fun time as always, and I'm sure we got some great information out there. We're sorry about not being able to solve the pizza box riddle, but we can't fix everything. Thanks a lot for listening.
Please rate, review, and subscribe. To do that, go to the iTunes podcast or Spotify app on your phone and search for Unpacked with PMMI.